In a growing arms race in space, Russia has launched an anti-satellite missile. Dr. Brad Tucker and I dive into this, Talking Science, Story of the Week.
Across Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts and YouTube, this is Talking Science with Dr. Brad Tucker and Matt Miller.
Bit of doom and gloom, or potential doom and gloom. Russia has launched an anti-satellite missile. Not the first time that they've done this, not the first time they've had this capability, but they're really ramping up the testing on this anti-satellite capability in a growing arms race in space.
That's right. Now, we'll just be clear here. They didn't actually end up physically launching and destroying a target. It was a simulated mission with a real launch to a kind of simulated target. And as I said, this isn't new, but it was a new version of a test, a new missile, and follows after some stories that we've covered about Space Force's first launch into space, also Space Force saying about Russian interference with satellites. And one of the things that people were inherently worried about in this growing militarization of space and exactly things like this, moving more and more into conflict in space. So it's definitely an area to watch out for. An
interesting one too, because I think last year we covered India developing this technology.
Yes, they did it kind of out of the blue. It was about a year ago now, in fact, and they were quite censored for what they did. So in that case, India launched a missile, destroyed one of their own satellites to show it. And the problem here, why everyone's worried, is not just the militarization aspect. It is really, you blow up a satellite, this produces thousands of pieces of debris, space junk, which is uncontrolled, which can crash into other things and adds this growing problem of space junk. Now, when India did this, they said, oh, well, we're testing a satellite near that was going to do re-entry, so it was only going to be up there for a few weeks. While that was mostly true, explosions in space never go exactly according to plan, no matter how much you would like it. And so some of that debris does not stay near the Earth, and it spreads out. And there is some debris that will be up there for weeks to months to years. You know, when China did a test in 2007, there is still a stream of debris from China's anti-satellite missile test. 13 years later, orbiting the Earth.
And as we've sort of alluded to, it's this building up of conflict in space, really. Russia's made some interesting moves with satellites in the last few weeks as well. Just in general, things are getting a little bit hot in orbit.
It's a slippery slope. And one of the great things that space has always had is that there has been this cooperation. You know, the Apollo-Soyuz tests in the middle or the height of the 70s during not only the space race, but the Cold War, cooperation in the 80s, the building an International Space Station in the 80s and the 90s. So many of these things that Russia and America in particular, you know, nominal adversaries, have worked together in space. And in fact, were the groups that led the signings of the treaties in the 60s to prevent a militarization of space are now the ones kind of defying their own leadership in some ways. And it is a slippery slope.
Do you think it's a little bit like the Cold War? Obviously, the Cold War was quite a significant event, and not trying to make light of it here, but in terms of another sort of Cold War, like it's just this escalation, but not really going to be leading to anything. Hopefully, calmer heads prevail in the years to come.
Yeah, you hope so, right? You know, the Cold War had the political tones, the economic tones, and also, you know, the military buildup. It is almost spot on, exactly right, what it seemingly is. You do hope that, again, as you said, calmer heads prevail and nothing happens, or at least nothing really physically happens. But, you know, with space, it's the accidents you worry about, the mishaps of things that go wrong in a test or don't go according to plan, or, you know, Russia doesn't talk to the U.S. about something and their satellites collide or something goes wrong. So lots of potential for something to go wrong when they don't intend it to go wrong. And I think that's always the worrying issue in these areas.
The accidental whoopsie.
Yeah, the accidental whoopsie, because it's usually a big whoopsie when it's in space. There's no such thing as a small incident in space. That is not physically possible.
And what sort of range are we talking about with these missiles? How high up are they getting to?
So you know, right now most of them are targeting low to higher low Earth orbit. No one has really attempted geosynchronous orbit, because not only is geosynchronous orbit that 36,800 kilometer-ish mark where satellites stay in their same spot relative to Earth, that's such a small window of area that if you do ruin that, you are completely screwed. But it's also harder to get to. It doesn't mean people won't try, people won't test, but it's definitely been in that low middle range. And that is the issue. That is where a lot of the space junk already is. So you're polluting an already polluted area. Not that polluting non-polluted areas are okay, but it's just, adding insult to injury there.
If there is an accident that happens up there, it's not going to come raining down on Earth, but it's certainly going to cause some disruptions for satellites. What sort of satellites are at threat here in this low Earth orbit?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great point. It's not like the people on Earth are going to really be harmed, but it's all that critical stuff. So there's a lot of Earth observation satellites at those heights, weather satellites, communication satellites, Starlink, for instance. So imagine, we talk about Starlink quite a lot. So let's say Starlink has their full network and there's thousands of satellites up there. That's exactly the heights they are. The Hubble Space Telescope, the International Space Station, all of those are in that 300 to 400 kilometer range. Can you imagine if the space station is destroyed, right? Again, not that it will, but can you imagine the what if?
It'll be a rather large whoopsies.
Yes, exactly. So these are the sorts of things that are at risk when we talk about those heights.